Good morning, everybody, and welcome to one of the first Facebook Lives in this group. So today, what I'm going to talk about is popular side hustle options that are commonly being done by professionals in education and healthcare. And I'm going to talk about the one that worked best for me that I was eventually able to scale up and turn into a full-time job that replaced my school SLP income. And for those of you who don't know me or who maybe haven't known me very long, you know that I did have my doctorate when I left, so I was at the top of the salary scale. So again, that was really the main goal when I first started doing things on the side. Part of it was, it's always nice to earn that extra income, have some autonomy there. But in the end of in my mind, I always thought I would like to have the option to scale this up to a full-time income. So that is what I was able to do. So just a couple housekeeping things here. So again, this group is brand new. It just opened it last week because a lot of my readers have been asking me, like, how did you do it? How did you start this business and be able to do this full time and have that flexibility? And so I wanted to start answering some of those questions and start creating some content surrounding those topics. So today, what I'm going to do, this is going to be kind of informal. In the future and in the coming weeks and months, I am going to have some more formal information and trainings like I do on my website now. For those of you who know me, my area of expertise is language therapy. I've got a lot of information and trainings available on that site. But this discussion about how I started my business is something brand new that I am doing for you and for my readers based on a lot of the questions I was getting. So as I'm discussing with you and listening to your questions and things like that, I'm really gathering a lot of information about what you need. However, I do, based on my level of experience and what has worked for me, I do have an idea of where I'm going to go with this, because I know that a lot of people out there are wondering, okay, so I'm in this job, I've got a lot of red tape surrounding how I serve my students, how I do therapy, and I'd really like to have some freedom. I'd like to earn more. I'd like to feel like I'm more fulfilled and earning what I'm worth, and maybe not be so dependent on this one job for all of my income and just have some of that control. And I think a lot of people are in the back of their minds thinking, well, I'd like to be able to earn something on the side, but it's a little bit scary. Well, not a little bit scary, really scary to think, okay, I'm just going to quit my job and start this business. And that's unfortunately what is kind of glamorized. Like when you watch Shark Tank, they kind of pat people on the back when they're living in a van down by the river, or like living in their parents' basement eating ramen noodles. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to do that. I never did that. I didn't ever really modify my quality of life, because what I did was I figured out what was working so that I knew it was a tried and true and sustainable idea before I started to scale back on my full-time job. So what I'm going to do today is talk through, again, some of those options that I did for earning money on the side and for figuring out what that next step was. I was a school SLP working full-time with a pre-K through late elementary population. Eventually, I was doing some secondary as well. And I wanted the next step. I loved what I was doing, but I did not love that I often didn't have a lot of control over how I served my students. And even though I did have a really good, I was very fortunate. I had very good bosses that allowed me to have some freedom, and that allowed me to try things like different scheduling options and things like that. But I did find that they could only do so much as well. So I really wanted to create a situation where I could create a movement and really take a stand and really impact more people. And so I think a lot of people who are looking to earn more on the side, it's, yes, the money is good, but it's more about what the money enables you to do. I'm now in a position that I can help a lot of SLPs with things that I was struggling with early on in my career. And I just wasn't able to do that when I was just all in the weeds doing therapy all the time. And I didn't have a platform for sharing that information. So I'm going to go through and talk about all the things that I did. And I'm going to talk about the traditional ways to earn more money on the side if you are a therapist, if you're for teachers as well. And then I'm going to just go through some of the less traditional ones or some of the newer ones, and then talk about why I came to the conclusion that online courses were the best option for me. So number one, the first thing that I tried when I was first starting out, and actually I did this the first year that I was working, was that I was working in the schools and I did some PRN work. So again, I was working at the school, and then over the summer, I got a job in the nursing homes and was doing therapy again. So obviously it was nice. I got some additional experience. It does earn you some more money when you are PRN. You get paid a little bit more because you sometimes have to take, you're kind of the fill-in person. You might have to do weekends and holidays. You don't get insurance typically, or not. Yeah, typically you don't get health insurance. So a lot of times you do end up getting paid a higher hourly rate, and you do end up earning more, getting experience, but you are still working for somebody else, and you're still going to have to run into some of that, again, the red tape and those guidelines, like you've got to get a certain number of hours of therapy in, or you have a certain productivity requirement, and or maybe the facility that you're working for doesn't want you to order certain evaluations. And so that puts you in a tricky situation because you might know that they're best for your patients, but then the facility doesn't want to pay for them and all of this stuff. So again, for me, it was good, but it was just more of the same for me. And so I knew that ultimately it wasn't while I did it for a while, it wasn't the side income option that I really wanted to double down on and do for the long haul. The next option that I did was that I did some adjunct teaching. So again, a lot of people really want to teach and find that very fulfilling. I loved being able to teach. I taught in special ed and speech pathology because my doctorate was in special ed. My bachelor's and master's were in speech pathology, so I could work in either department. And the benefits is that when I was getting my doctoral program, because I was on the faculty, I got some tuition waivers. So from a funding aspect, when I was going through my degree program, it totally made sense for me to work for the department so that I could get that tuition waiver. But then once I was finished, and especially if you're somebody, maybe you have a master's degree and you're not planning on going back for a doctorate and you just want to start going on to that next step and you don't want to get a degree, you certainly don't have to get your doctorate to be able to move on, start a business, and obtain a leadership role in the field. If you're not thinking of going and working for a university, or if you're not in a program where you're getting your degree, once I got past that stage, I found that the same issues were coming up when I was teaching adjunct, because again, I had to follow this specific curriculum because there's all these standards for the state that you have to follow and things like that. And of course, those are there for a reason, but I was finding that there were things that I knew as a clinician in the trenches that I knew needed to be taught, and I couldn't always teach them, and I couldn't always give people what I knew that they needed, because I still had to follow somebody else's rules, and I still didn't have that freedom. And then also there's the freedom and this is true for both salaried positions and hourly positions, you're kind of in this salary cap, because what happens with a salaried position is, let's say I put in extra work at my position in the school, or again, I do a really good job in my adjunct course. Yes, there may be some benefit. There could be some, you get a promotion or things like that, depending, or maybe if you're teaching adjunct, that maybe it results to a tenure track position. But a lot of times what happens in salaried positions is that they almost incentivize people to do less work in a way, because a lot of times, and that actually doesn't end up happening a lot. What happens a lot of times is that the people who are in those positions, they want to help people, they wear their heart on their sleeve, they want to do good work. I mean, people really want to do good work. That's why we're in the profession that we're in. And so what happens is that they end up doing all of this extra work and not getting compensated for it. And then when we actually figure out what's our hourly rate, it's actually not that good. And so we end up really burning ourselves out and not getting recognized for it. And if we do better work, we don't get incentivized for that. And there's no reward for that. And again, it's not that we're in it for the money, but it's like we make more of an impact and there's nothing, like we don't have any additional resources that come of that. Whereas if you have a position where you do a better job, you earn more, then you have more to give. You can actually use those resources for good. And we're not able to do that if we have those salary positions. There's always that limit to how much you can make. And same with the hourly positions, again, when there's productivity requirements, a lot of times employers, I remember when I was PRN, the full-time employees would call me because they were like, I'm going to hit overtime. I'm going to hit my max hours. Like I have all these patients to see and I can't see them because I'm going to be working too many hours and I'm going to get in trouble because they don't want to pay me overtime. I mean, think about that situation. It probably would have been in those patients' best interest to have consistency with the therapists so that they were actually having the same therapist rather than having me come in and fill in when they were seeing this other person. And again, it's like there's still some of those things that come up. And then the other thing is that there are only so many hours in the day. So when you're trapped in the hourly model, what ends up happening a lot of times is that, again, there's that cap. There are only so many hours you can work, so there's only so much you can make. Yeah, you can get a raise, but it's still limited. And then again, a lot of times your employer won't let you work overtime because they don't want to pay you. So again, there are that model of that traditional model, again, has a lot of things that don't always allow us to provide the best quality services. And so those were some of the big challenges in those first things that I did in order to earn money on top of what I was doing in the schools. And again, those were attempts to figure out what is my next step. Yes, I probably could have leveraged them into something else, but to me, it just wasn't resonating. I just knew that there was more that I could do and that there was a way that I could leverage my time more. The obvious next thing that I tried, because I thought, I don't like that I'm so dependent on an employer for my income because I don't have a say in how things are going to be done. I want to be the one driving. I'm the expert here. A lot of these supervisors that are telling me how I need to do things they're not familiar with what it's like in the trenches and they don't know my discipline, so they can't always make those recommendations about how things need to be done. And a lot of times they knew that and they were just doing their best, but they could only do so much as well because of your boss and your boss's boss and your boss's boss's boss and all of that. So that's when I decided that I would start going down the private practice route. So the plus side, obviously, is that you do have some more control over how you can see your patients. I got to see my clients one-on-one, and that obviously resulted in better results. The downside was that, again, I was still trapped in that billable hour. So there was only so much of my time that I could give. And the other thing was that, again, I was working full time in the schools. I had that 4 to 7 time block when I had to see my clients if I had them, and then try to figure out ways to network and market and things like that. Because a lot of times I would, try to stop by pediatricians' offices and talk to them and things like that. And that's a really busy time of the day for them. So I felt like I had this finite window of time where I had to do private practice activities, and it was really hard for me to make the most of it when I was working full-time in the school. So I thought, well, I'm either going to have to go down to part-time or try to cram it all into my summer break, when a lot of times even my clients that I had kind of wanted to take a break during the summer. So it was really hard for me, and I was still running into that barrier of time. And so I thought in my head, I've got to have something that allows me to work on this anytime, anywhere, and that leverages my time better. And I heard this was, let's see, again, this is back around 2014 or so, when I was, just graduated. And I heard a close family member of mine, I will just leave it at that to protect their confidentiality, but basically the situation was a family of 4 living in a very expensive area to live, neither parent working, and one parent going back for an advanced degree. So neither one of them was working for a year, and they were living in a very expensive place, and one of them was also going to school. Everybody was kind of like, are you guys okay? How are you doing it? And I didn't ever get the full intricate explanation, but I got a cryptic reference to a term, passive income. And I was kind of like, what? What is passive income? What does that even mean? So I started Googling and trying to figure out, okay, what are some other ways that I can earn income on the side besides a private practice, regardless of if it's an in-person private practice or a telepractice, because obviously online gives you some flexibility that you don't have when you're in person, but you've still got to be there to deliver that therapy if you're doing one-on-one. So we'll kind of lump that into the same category there. And so I was like, what is this passive income thing? So I realized that it was all about creating products and selling them online, because what happens is, or just selling products and services and creating them, because what happens is that, again, you create the product once or whatever it is, and then you sell it over and over again. Well, each time you make a sale, you're not required to be present every time. So you could, in theory, the amount of time it takes you to sell 5 of them in 1 hour, like you could be at lunch with a friend and realize that you made a bunch of sales. So again, passive income, meaning that you don't have to be present in order to make money. Now, I actually prefer the term leveraged time, because people throw around the term passive income very erroneously. Like, they kind of make it sound like you can just throw something up and people will just start buying it, and you can just sit around on the beach and drink margaritas. That's not exactly how it works. It's more about doing the work up front, and again, leveraging your time. So it's not that it's passive as in you're not doing anything. It's just that you're out of that salaried and dollars per hour model. And again, if you do it well, then you are going to be able to make more if you do it better and actually impact more people. And the thing is that if you do it well and you earn more, that's going to just put you in a better situation. And what that allows you to do is, number one, be more selective. Like, if you have a job that's a less than ideal situation, you're not totally dependent on it. You've got a little bit of give to where maybe, again, you can take another position. I found that when I was in the transition of moving out, because I scaled down to part-time eventually once I had vetted my idea for my income stream, I found that once I was making money through something else besides my job, there actually came a point where I was negotiating going down to part-time. And if they said no, I was prepared to walk away, because I knew I'm making enough money over here. I can get this other job, temporarily, that's kind of a bridge to me building up this business, but I can get this job that pays a little bit less, that is actually more flexible, so that I can build this up. So what I was going to do was leave my job in the schools for a teletherapy position if they said no, that I couldn't go down to part-time. They did let me go down to part-time, so I ended up not doing that. But before, again, I wouldn't have necessarily had that flexibility because, again, I would have gotten less money from the teletherapy position. And so the reason that I had that option, again, is that if you're not as dependent on your employer for your income, that does give you a little bit of leeway as far as the work that you can take. And that also means that if you're not dependent, it's, again, you have options for earning money. What that does is it allows you to be more selective. If you have an offer and you know that it's just going to be a crappy situation with terrible productivity requirements, or like 1 million students on your caseload and you're not going to be able to do a good job, you don't have to stand for those situations. The more that we're able to be independent and be able to generate income on our own, the more we're able to take a stand and not settle for those situations and support those systems that aren't really supporting our students and our patients, clients, etc. So as I'm onto this passive income thing, I stumbled across, obviously, Teachers Pay Teachers is one thing that is very popular for people who are in education and healthcare and therapy positions. And so that was, once I was, I was doing a little bit of the private practice, but realizing that I was still kind of trapped by the billable hour. And I was still only able to serve one person at a time. And I just wanted more. I wanted to reach more people and leverage my time better. So that's when I started looking into Teachers Pay Teachers. And if you actually, I don't know if you can go on Teachers Pay Teachers and Google it. I have like 2 things on there and they're free. So what I did is I dabbled, I looked into it, and there were just a couple things that I realized about that model that weren't going to allow me to reach the people that I wanted to reach and do what I wanted to do. So number one, if you've noticed that there is a certain price range that is expected for therapy materials, lesson plans, and things like that. There is kind of a price cap. I mean, you can only charge so much for a set of flashcards and worksheets, etc. So that means that in order for you to generate enough income where it's a decent amount, it requires you to sell more units, which just means that you've kind of got to work harder to actually earn that money. Now, yes, a lot of people are able to do that successfully, and hats off to them. But I was like, wow, like I'm kind of late to the blogging party and the Teachers Pay Teachers party, because it was a lot of people had these huge stories by the time I was starting, and there was competition and things like that. And I thought, wow, it's like I'm going to have to sell a lot of all of these individual products that are lower priced when you think of the range of possibilities for things that you can actually sell and services that you can sell. And so I, again, realized it is going to still be hard for me to build this up so that I can actually generate enough income that I can replace my school SLP salary. So that was the first thing, which is why I didn't really go down the Teachers Pay Teachers route. And then there was a second thing, and that was, again, and I am not discounting, like, those Teachers Pay Teachers people work their asses off. They're awesome, and they are providing an amazing service to therapists, teachers, everywhere. But I felt from the pains that I had when I was early on in my career, they weren't solved by not having the right materials. They were solved by not having the right systems and not having the right skills so that I could take all those materials and put them together. So yes, you need good materials. There's certainly a need for products like that. And there's a need for products like that developed by people who get it, not by people who are up here who haven't been in the field or in the trenches for years. So there's certainly a need for that, but I just wanted more because I knew that there were so many products on my shelf that I hadn't used in years. And I just had all this stuff and I didn't know what to do with the stuff that I had. And so I just didn't want to add to that overwhelm because there are so many, like Google grammar worksheets or whatever therapy materials that you're working on. There's just an overwhelming amount of information up there. And I didn't need more. I needed less. I needed to have a system and a process to funnel what I was actually doing, meaning that I actually had to figure out what strategies to use to compile it all together. And I knew that I couldn't deliver that with just doing therapy materials. I didn't want to create more of what was already there. I knew I needed to fill in a different puzzle piece that was missing. And for me, that was giving people, for my specific situation, it was creating an entire system for language therapy. That's what really helped me make a breakthrough. And I wanted to teach people that. And there was no way that I could actually do that if I was just giving them one-off materials. Now, yes, I do offer therapy materials. I have a couple that I offer for free, and then I have a couple that are kind of that are lower priced compared to my courses. But the point of them is to give people a taste and give people an idea of the framework and mindset that I'm going to teach in my courses. And the whole point of that is to eventually get those people to enroll in my courses. Yes, obviously it's a win for me. I do earn more that way, but I also get to serve them better. And so it's strategic, and then it's guiding them into something that I know that they need, that I know is in their best interest. And it's an option that's going to allow me to help them and serve them better and give them a higher level of service than I would be able to offer by just giving them a download. So I do those things, but I do them very strategically. They're all, again, leading towards something else. And yes, some people choose to only read my free stuff. Some people only choose to just buy the downloads. I can't control that. It is going to kind of funnel down, but it's more about those people that do take that next step and enroll in those courses, for them, for what it does for them, and that service that I'm able to offer them. So that brings me to what I actually ended up doing, which was online courses. So the reason that it was in my best interest and in my customers, clients, students, whatever you'd like to call them, the people I serve, in their best interest is because, number one, you can charge more for a course. The value of a course where somebody tells you a complete system is more. You can offer it for a higher price than you can for therapy materials. So I do, when I do materials, a lot of times they are offered within the course where I show you the system for actually using the materials. So what I do is I've got the course, and then within the course, it's, okay, here's this worksheet, and this is how you use it. And this is how it works into a complete system rather than just discrete strategies, because that's not really what people need. People don't need more, they need less. They need to funnel down all that stuff that they have. And so that is in your best interest, because again, you are earning enough that it's a win for you. I would not be able to do this full time and devote the time and attention that I need to this if I wasn't earning enough, if I wasn't earning enough to be able to replace my SLP job. So I can actually do a better job because I am offering a service that allows me to charge a higher price. And it's also in the student's best interest because I'm not just giving them random tactics that are kind of, again, not in a complete system. I'm not just giving them more. I'm actually taking it to that next step and showing them how to use it. And so that is serving them better as well. So it's a win for everybody. And it feels good. Like, it feels good to me to do it that way because I know that I'm offering those higher level services. And so that is why I ultimately ended up selling, doing online courses. And gosh, I had one point when I was doing 4 things at once. Like, I was doing adjunct, my school job, and private practice, and online courses. And it became very clear to me that online courses were the thing that, of all those side income streams that I have, the thing that was really hitting and taking off, and also the thing that I enjoyed doing the most, because I really felt like it's the thing that gave me the most control over my time, how I leveraged my time, and enabled me to do the thing that I always wanted to do, but never was able to do before, when again, I was totally dependent on an employer for all of my income. Because then it's kind of like, again, kind of like living with your parents. Yeah, it's nice that they feed you and put a roof over your head and pay the bills, but then you've got to follow their rules. When you're self-employed, you make the rules. Yes, there are things that you're responsible for now, but you call the shots. And so it's amazing to have that freedom. Now, a part of the other reason, and I am planning on working on some content in the near future, where I am going to be showing you some numbers and showing you kind of how the math worked for me, but just off the top of my head, my calculations. I remember I started, I would say, in 2015, in 16, I was kind of fumbling around in blogging and not really sure what I was doing. But when I went full in and was really launching my course and offering it regularly, and this was Language Therapy Advanced, was my very first course, and is still my most popular course right now. The first year that I did that, so that was 2017, was really when I got it all put together and figured out how to do it. I was also teaching adjunct. So I think I made and I taught adjunct in the spring, summer, and in the fall that year. And so I made maybe like $8,000 that year, adjunct, after taxes and all of that stuff. And I wasn't doing PRN at that time, but my best year doing PRN in the summer part-time, I think I made like $9,000. And then in 2017, when I was doing adjunct and again, made $8,000. And then selling my course, I made, again, $8,000 for my adjunct courses and $25,000 for my online course. So when I compared the numbers of what I was actually able to make for my time, I was making much more for the course. So that's how I knew that this is the thing that I really need to double down on and hone in on, so that, again, this is going to be what's most likely to give me something that's a full-time gig. Now, I know tons of people who, just out of choice, they're like, you know what, I don't want to leave my therapy job. I love doing therapy. Well, that's great. Like it doesn't have to be about replacing your full-time job. A lot of people just, they want to stay in the schools, or they want to stay doing whatever they're doing. Maybe they have a private practice and they want something else on the side. Again, like, I think creative people, or even just high-performing people, we do one thing and it's like, okay, I'm ready for the next thing. I'm ready for the next challenge. So whether it be that you want to have something that scales up full time, or whether you want to just have something on the side and maybe stay being a therapist, again, it can work either way. But the great thing about it is that it gives you the choice. Again, you're not dependent on, I have to be working for somebody else for my income. I have a sustainable way that I can earn more by again, working for myself, and you have that option. So for me, the most efficient way, again, I did the Teachers Pay Teachers, private practice, and online courses, just because I could get everything set up for my course, get my sales mechanism set up. And yes, I do some things live, like webinars, Facebook Lives like this. And yes, I have a lot of stuff to prepare, but I don't necessarily always have to be there 100% of the time to be earning money. I have to be able to make sure that I'm there and do what I need to do to make sure that I'm supporting those students that I have, but there's not a set window of time where it has to be done. So that means if like next week, my stepdaughter has a field trip on Wednesday, so I'm going to go be there. Yes, I am going to have to account for that when I get my work done, but I can just go be there. And this summer, when I went on vacation, I had a whole bunch of things set up beforehand so that I knew I could be earning some money while I was on vacation. And so again, it's the whole idea of leverage time and passive income. And again, when, you know, again, with private practice, if you have to be there, it's a lot harder to do that. It's like if you're not working and seeing patients, or someone under you that working for you isn't working and seeing patients, then you're not generating income. But if you're selling something that was created once that you can sell over and over again, it does leverage your time much more. And again, when you're comparing Teachers Pay Teachers, online materials, ebooks, things like that versus online courses, again, your cost per unit is going to be so much higher for courses because, again, the perceived value and the level that you're able to serve is so much higher. So again, that was why it was just a clear winner for me. Let's see, there were a couple other things I wanted to point out before I signed off today. Again, the point today is to just kind of talk through the different options and talk through the different, I guess, pros and cons of all these different things that I have tried personally. So I will be in the coming weeks talking a little bit more about some things that you need to consider when you are creating an online course. Because a clear winner for me and what really allowed me to serve at the highest level, and what I've noticed is that there are a lot of people who have opted for some of those other models, is that I know some of those people, like, for example, people who are working, doing Teachers Pay Teachers, or people who are in private practice. What I did is I kind of dabbled with those and then just skipped on to courses. I know a lot of people who are in private practice now or selling Teachers Pay Teachers products that are starting to realize some of these things that I've said today and that are coming towards, okay, now I want to create this online course. I figured out how to do this, but there's still that next level, and I want to be able to offer this higher level of services. So Amber is asking, I stumbled upon your video. Do you offer courses for professionals or parents, or both? I only do professionals, but I do have some friends and colleagues that offer courses for parents. So there's a couple things you want to consider for both, and neither one of these things is a deal breaker. It's just something to consider. And this depends on your discipline. So I know that if you're going to do therapy, like if you're an SLP, and this might be true for others, if you're going to do therapy, a lot of times if you're going to do that online, you have to be licensed in the state that you're in and then in the state that your client is in. But for training and information, it's a little bit different. You want to be aware of the different guidelines in your state and make sure that you're not violating anything. And make sure that you know where that line is between just providing courses and trainings versus providing therapy. So you don't want to put yourself in violation. But yes, absolutely, you can do courses for parents and caregivers as well. And the other thing with online trainings for professionals, the big thing that comes up, and I guess the objection that people have as to why they don't get started, is that they think that they need to get it approved by their credentialing agency. And so for SLPs, you don't. ASHA, or the American Speech Language and Hearing Association, will take CMHs or CEUs. So CMHs are hours from a person who has not been pre-approved by ASHA or who's not affiliated with ASHA in any way, but they will take those hours. They just have to be, you just have to get a certificate from it. So my hours are not CEUs, they're CMHs. I don't have my stuff pre-approved. I will probably do that eventually, just because I think it will be a little bit easier for my customers, and it might be kind of some additional PR and brownie points. But I will tell you that people still, if you have identified a problem that is a major issue in someone's life, they will do it regardless of whether it counts for hours or not. So really the key in coming up with a course idea is, do I have some knowledge or expertise that can help people? And is there this major problem that's not being solved for people? And can you solve that? That's really all you need to do in order to be able to create a course. because, there are always ways around those things. There are considerations, but they're not things that need to stop you in their tracks. Another thing is that you want to be aware of those guidelines, but for me, a lot of times you want to be able to put it out there and test your idea before you really go all in. And that certification process is really lengthy. So a lot of times what could happen is that you put months and months and months and years worth of effort into building this course, and you haven't even tested if people wanted it. Whereas what I did was that I created it, I offered it to people, they took it, and it was CMHs, not CEUs. So I validated the idea. So now I know that if I did want to get it certified, which I will eventually, once I grow a bigger team, I know that it's going to be a worthwhile investment of time. So I recommend that you be aware of those things, but you don't let them be things that you need to kind of obsess about and stop you from moving forward. Because if you offer a solution to a problem that is a big problem for people, people will be willing to invest in it. You will be surprised. And even if you are certified, if you don't offer a solution to an important problem, people aren't going to buy it, whether it's certified or not. Let's see, a couple other things I wanted to mention. Oh, yeah, and I would just say here, like, what resonated with me was online professional development for other SLPs. Obviously, I'm branching out now because this is more along the lines of business coaching and training. But I've seen people be very creative with how they use their skills. So again, there is always a way. There are always little things that you're going to have to deal with. There is always a loophole, and it's not about like being sneaky. It's about just figuring things out so that you can help people. I know somebody who was a physical therapist, and she was also a Pilates instructor. And I've got a friend who's a PT now who is really, really stressed out at her job. She's a supervisor. Again, she's worked her way up. And she's like, wow, like, that's really cool. I'd really like to do what you're doing, but don't you have to get your course certified? And I'm like, well, it depends what you do. So I know this other PT who she helps executives perfect their golf swing, because she has that knowledge of anatomy and movement, and it's not therapy. So she can do it from anywhere in the world. She has that PT background, but she's using it a different way. Another physical therapy example is, and he doesn't do courses. He does a lot of, like, he has a huge YouTube following, and I think he's got an online membership site, but Kelly Starrett is a physical therapist, and he's got a huge following, but he shows people how to improve their mobility so that they can perform athletically. And again, there's physical therapy standards and guidelines and things like that, but he's just figured out how to grow this huge following and make it happen, and again, work around that. So yeah, I mean, and another thing people, gosh, I'm really going into a lot of things today, but another objection that people have is like, I'm not expert enough, I'm not good enough. So I did, like, I went back and got my doctorate, and that was, I leverage that all the time in the way that I build my courses, but that's not the only way that you can develop expertise. I will tell you that feeling of I'm nervous, I'm afraid to put myself out there, I still have that all the time. I had that when I started. You would think having a doctorate would make you feel like, wow, I know what I'm doing, but there's always going to be that feeling of discomfort and like, oh my gosh, are people going to like what I say and things like that. So I'll tell you, from somebody who has like 1 million degrees and credentials, it's not going to solve that problem. You're always going to feel that. But I will also tell you that I know people who have way fewer credentials and degrees that I have that are absolutely killing it. I actually was mentored by a guy who dropped out of university to start teaching about online poker, and I'm not even sure if he went back and finished his degree. So maybe he has a bachelor's, maybe he doesn't, I don't know, but he mentored me because he knew something that I didn't know. And he's mentored high level people because he developed that skill set in a different way. So you don't have to feel like you're perfect. A lot of times the key is figuring out what the problem is that needs to be solved. Because what happens, again, is that there are things that need to be done out there and no one is doing them, and someone needs to step up and do something about it. Why not you? Again, like, you don't need to be perfect. You're never going to be perfect. Nobody who's doing anything out there is perfect. So don't let feeling like you're not expert enough stop you, and don't let feeling like, oh my gosh, there's this thing I've got to figure out, like, do I get it certified and my license and things like that. Be aware of those things, but don't let them stop you in your tracks. Because again, if the people who are successful just, figured out a way to move forward anyways, and just be of service to people. And I think the other thing is that a lot of people, and I'll be honest, I've gotten grief about this, but I don't care, because it's enabled me to help people. But if you're obsessing about some of these things, like, do I need to get it pre-approved, or do I need to have my outline perfect and my course perfectly designed before I launch it, or do I need to get this credential before I'm good enough to launch my course? All that does is delay the time that it takes for you to help the people that desperately need your help right now. So think of it that way, is that if you really, really needed help from someone, and they were like, oh, well, I'm not quite good enough yet, but I need to go do this thing first, or I need to go do this other thing first before I'm going to feel good enough about this thing to be able to help you. I mean, you'd want them to say, you know what, I'm going to be working on these things, but let me help you now. So I mean, think of it like that. And, again, I do think that a lot of times when you think about comparing, and I know that a lot of people have this feeling with starting a private practice too, like, am I good enough to charge for my services and all of that? Or even when you think about leveling up from creating products to creating a course, again, it's always that feeling of, am I good enough? Yes, you're good enough. And again, the reason is that, like, with courses, it is that higher level, and it is something that's going to position you as an expert. And sometimes the only way to be seen as that expert and get that experience of knowing how to do it is to do it. So, I mean, it's as simple as that. So let's see, I've talked about, as I wrap this up here today, and I have tons more, and again, we've been going for 45 minutes. I know that this is probably, you answer some questions, and then that really, instead of leaving you with answers, stews up and generates a million more questions. But there's a lot more where this came from. I will be continuing to work on this and create some information for you, doing some other lives, answering your questions. Feel free to send me your questions about online course creation and tell me some things that are in your head, like, what about this? What about this? How do I do this? Tell me those things. Again, I might not be able to give you an in-depth answer right away, but what I'm doing is I am taking inventory of all of your questions so that I can figure out how to cycle around and figure out a way to support you through that. So to wrap up what we talked about today, again, the whole point is, how was I able to create a side income that was able to replace my full-time SLP income so that I could do this full-time and be of service to you? That way that I did it was online courses, because that was the option that enabled me to have the most freedom, and that enabled me to serve people the best and leverage my time and actually earn more, which has enabled me to make a bigger impact. And so that will, again, having the right model is key to being successful when you create that side income stream. Because a lot of times, again, there are things you can do to earn money, but a lot of them don't leverage your time, and you want to be able to make the most out of the time that you spend. So I talked about PRN positions and adjunct positions. I talked about private practice and teachers pay teachers. Again, with PRN and adjunct, they were good experiences, but again, we're still stuck in the being employed by somebody else and not having complete control about what you teach and how you serve, and then also having that cap on what you can earn. And then there's teachers pay teachers in private practice, which again, private practice, you're still typically stuck in the billable hour. And again, time is still a factor. And then with teachers pay teachers, time is, the time differential is a little bit different, but again, we're talking about, again, giving people just discrete strategies rather than giving them systems, which is often more of what they need than discrete strategies. And then also leveraging your time better because you are making more per transaction and you're serving at a higher level. Because with products, with therapy materials, you just can't charge as much as you can for online courses or even coaching and consulting. And then finally, we talked about the winner, the one that was the winner for me, which is online courses, because that allowed me to give people that complete system and leverage my time the most. So we're going to wrap up today right there. Let me know your questions. Let me know your comments, and super excited to have all of you be signing on and listening with me today. And let me know what other questions you have about creating online courses for, and again, for if you are a professional in education and healthcare. Let me know what your questions are. All right, everybody have a great day.